Hello, this month's Soap Club challenge is about soap dough in bed. And I started this video on soap dough and realized that it was pretty long, and so I'm creating this as a separate video, and then my entry for this challenge I will do as a separate video. So I wanted to talk a little bit about soap dough. First, obviously, we have to talk about the recipe. Now, this is a basic free recipe you can use. It works. It's not the best, but it definitely gives you usable soap dough. If you are looking for some inspiration on other recipes, I would check out Love and Soap and Starcross Soapery. I will provide links in the description below. Also, Sorcery Soap is the queen of soap making, so to speak. She is the one that kind of created and pioneered this movement. So definitely check her out. When you are making soap dough, I like a 80 to 20, 75, 25 ratio of hard to soft oils. That's not what everyone uses. It's what I like best. What many people recommend is taking your standard recipe and trying to make soap dough with it and see how it works. I tried that with mine, and my standard recipe is about almost a 50-50 hard to soft, and I just didn't like what I got. It was too sticky for me. So I do a separate recipe for my soap dough. In fact, the recipe I use is the one that was provided by Starcross Soapery. I just love it. For me, it works great.
I have already prepped this. Now I need to split it up into colors and make the soap. This is definitely, you can see it's opaque. I've barely stick blended it. Because it's such a high percent of hard oils, it definitely thickens up quick. So I'm going to start working with this. Okay, so when it comes to colorants, because you are not going to gel your soap dough, you do not want to gel it. The colors are not going to be as bold or bright as if we gelled it. So you want to add extra color. It will lighten, trust me. I've made black soap dough that ends up gray because I didn't add enough color, because I'm like, oh, that looks dark enough, I don't need to add more, even though I know better. And I end up with gray soap dough the next day. So, I mean, general rule of thumb, I think, is about a teaspoon per pound of oils. You can play around with that. Some colorants I find I need a little bit more than that. Some I can get away with less. If you don't mind if they're lighter colors, you can definitely just use your normal amount. It really kind of depends on what you're trying to achieve. So I need varying shades of green, hence these are all going to be greens. You can see that this is already thickening. I mean, it's still totally workable, but it's just a high percentage of hard oils, and so it definitely sets up faster, and you just have to work probably a little bit quicker than general, especially if you're breaking it up into a variety of different colors. Okay, at this point you can see it is quite thick. So I pour into these single cavity molds. Some people prefer to pour into a plastic bag, then flatten it out, get all the air out, and seal it up. You can pop that in the fridge so it doesn't gel if it is heating up too much. I don't do that for a number of reasons. I make a lot of soap dough at a time because I go through it fairly regularly. And seriously, I'd go through so many bags if I did that. Plus, I find that storage-wise, it's much easier for me to have these blocks. So I tend to prefer working with that. Plus, I can cover this up. You'll see once I finish up here, I can cover this up, let it basically sit for about 12 to 16 hours. Then I just unmold it, wrap it back up in some plastic wrap and seal it in a bag in a box, and it is fine. Like, I never have any issues. Also, I don't have problems with this gelling. Now, granted, it's winter time and it's cool out, but even in the summer, I just soap at lower temperatures, and I'll watch it. So if I do see it start to set up at all, I will definitely pop this, put it on a tray and pop it in the fridge. But I generally don't have issues with the soap gelling. So, like I said, you could take a plastic bag, put the soap in there, kind of flatten it out and seal it all up so that it is airtight. It's definitely probably a little bit easier to condition if you're going to use your hands when it's thinner, but for me, this is definitely the best option using the single cavity molds. So now I am going to take my plastic and just put it on so that it completely seals the soap up. And then just let it be until tomorrow, where I will then unmold it and wrap it back up in some fresh plastic wrap. So I wanted to add one other tidbit about making white soap dough. So you want to definitely prep your titanium dioxide in either oil or water. If you use water, then you're going to need to discount some of the water in your recipe. Otherwise, if you use the full water amount and then you add a water-based titanium dioxide, you are going to have sticky soap dough. It will just be too much water. So what I generally do, you can definitely prep the soap dough with, the titanium dioxide with oil instead. It's not my favorite. I do it, like, I needed to add a little bit of white to this blue, and I added my oil-based titanium dioxide versus my water because I didn't want extra water in there. Otherwise that blue would end up being too white, or I'm sorry, too wet, and that would cause issues. So let me see, I prep my titanium dioxide. This one's my oil, this one's my water. So generally when I need to make white soap dough, I just make a full batch. Like, I don't separate it into colors, it's just all white soap dough. And I discount my water to make up for the amount of water that I have used to mix my titanium dioxide. That way I still end up with a full water amount. I don't have to add extra oil and add an extra super fat, and I still get nice titanium white soap dough. So yeah, that's my tip when it comes to using white. Definitely never put just white dry titanium powder into it and try and stick blend it. You will end up with white specks. No matter how hard you try, you will end up with white specks. You just need to prep the titanium dioxide. You can do it with micas because they will mix in, but titanium dioxide, you're gonna get white specks. Okay, so this is about 15 hours after I made this batch of soap dough, and I am now basically going to wrap them up and store them. So you can see that it's a solid bar. It's pretty solid right now, like it feels pretty hard. It will soften up a bit. It just needs some time I find that when it initially comes out, or I guess within 24 hours after, it really is hard. Like mine just is hard. And part of that is probably because I use about 80% of hard oils. So the soap lightens up. This was a light gray, this was a dark gray, and the difference between them, yeah, I didn't add enough color. This was black, and it's now dark gray. So I have basically 3 varying hues of gray, but I don't have black. I will have to redo that. I know better. I know I should add more and I didn't, and so that's on me, but it's not the end of the world. The gray will get used, and I don't need a ton of black right now, so I'll manage. This orange lightened up significantly. So yeah, use extra coloring. Because we're not putting this through gel phase, the colors just don't get that pop and vibrancy that they normally would. So once I've unmolded, just gonna move those off to the side. I'm going to take my stretch tile. This is the only I swear by this plastic wrap. I don't know what it is, but it's the best that I've found when it comes to plastic wrap. That being said, you can use whatever plastic wrap you have. I'm just gonna pull out a whole length and going to lay out my blocks, cut this into strips, and then securely wrap these. I do not want any air getting to these. The goal is to keep them as tightly sealed as possible until you're ready to use it. And if you do, I have found that the soap dough lasts like forever. I know people say you should use it within a certain amount of time. If I've sealed mine well, I have found that it's still good months later. I mean, I think I've used some probably, I wouldn't say almost a year because I go through soap dough too quickly, but there's been some that's probably been a good 5 or 6 months before I've used up the last of certain colors that I don't use a ton of. And as long as it's been sealed properly, it's still been good. So again, just sealing these up. Okay, so once I've wrapped them up, how I store them is I put them in plastic, Ziploc plastic bags, just kind of work the air out of them, and then store them in these boxes. I have never had any trouble like this. I know people say to make it completely airtight, sealable. As long as I have had these well wrapped and put them in a bag, that is basically enclosed, and then put them in my box, like I said, this has always worked. I have soap I've made in here, and some of this I made back in December, and it's still perfectly good. I go and use it, pull it from this, no problem whatsoever. It's been completely sealed and wrapped, and then put in bags and then stored in this box. So that's just how I do it. There are many other ways. Everyone's gonna have their way that they like, but if you don't have a way, you're not sure what to do, you're welcome to try this. Okay, so the soap dough is made. The soap dough has saponified, and now it's time to use it. So how do I prepare, or what I call condition it, so that I can use it? So again, I do mine in the block. So here's a block. I'd already cut off a piece. Now, you can do this a couple ways. You can kind of cut your soap dough into small pieces, and then just work it together. Gosh, isn't that a lovely consistency? Look at that. Oh my word, so nice. So you said you can just cut it up and then start working it. I do mine in these big blocks, so I have to cut it up. I can't just break off pieces and mix it together. If you do the method where you pour yours in a plastic bag and you get it pretty flat and thin, that is much easier to break off pieces. But I make so much soap dough at a time that I would go through a million bags trying to make it that way. So it's easier for me to just pour it into single cavities. Works great. It's easy for me to store. So yeah, so I've just cut that up and then worked it all together. You can see it's gorgeous consistency. Oh my gosh, this is just gonna be so much fun to work with. So that's one way that you can do it. If I'm working with just small little things, so I say I only need a small bit, then I'll break it up and work it this way. But if I need, like I'm going to be extruding something and I need both of these blocks, well, breaking that up and working it together, it gets rough on the hands. It's just a lot of work. So what I actually do, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, it just is easier for me, is I will take my grater. I love this little handheld grater, and I can literally just grate the soap, which really doesn't take that long to grate up a whole block. I won't do the whole thing, but yeah. So I just grate it, and so now you see I'm left with obviously a whole lot of grated soap. I can just now kind of squish this together, and it works itself, like it conditions just much easier than if I were to break up or cut up all those little pieces and then work the soap together. Now, I generally do it this way because roll it. I'm going to be using it in my extruder. The huge majority of what I use my soap dough for is with the extruder. So you can see I just kind of grated some of this and rolled it into ball. I will grate, so this is a couple blocks that I just grated, conditioned, rolled into little tubes, so it's ready to go into my extruder. I wrap it up, and then this is my box of stuff that's already pre-made. I have a lot of stuff I'm going to be making, so I've already prepped a ton of soap dough, but I just wrap it up really well, put it in the bags, put it in the sealed box, and put it in the extruder, and it's good to go. It does not dry out on me. I don't have any issues with it getting hard. It is, I said, as long as it gets sealed and I don't leave it out after I finish grating it, like I grate it, condition it, wrap it, put it away. I've never had any issues with the soap getting too hard or said starting to cure or any of that. Like it's always been fine. So those are two ways that you can, again, condition your soap. Chop it up into little pieces and then kind of work it, or grate it and then just work it into so it's nice and flexible, and then go ahead and work with it. If you know you're going to be extruding, for me it's much more time effective to prep all my soap dough ahead of time, then pull out my extruders and just grab each color and extrude, 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 and then it's all done. Rather than extruding, prepping a color, extruding some more, prepping another color, just this is a quicker method. So those are the two ways that I condition or prepare my dough for use.